I was conditioned to be average, but I transcended because I knew I was meant for more. The inertia of average wants to suck us in and keep us average because everyone around us are average. But we have to realize that average is the enemy. And if we are going to flip that switch, we have to fight the inertia, the momentum that's trying to keep us down. Average people are looking for balance. Savages are not.
Welcome to another episode of the JJ Velasquez Show. I'm your host, JJ Velasquez, and I'm excited today, guys. I got a very special guest with me here. Of course, he's the founder of Fit Body Bootcamp, Keuilian Supplements, the author of the best-selling book, Man Up, teaches you how to cut the BS and dominate in your business and life. But of course, that's just a few of the things he's done. My favorite is he's a leader of men. He helps us become the 2.0 best version of ourselves. He's the rich dad, we all wish we had growing up. He's changed my life in so many ways, and just welcome my mentor and friend, Bedros Keuilian.
Thank you, JJ. Appreciate the opportunity, brother.
Yeah, man. Thanks for being here. And I just want to start off with, of course, one of the things, it's probably on the back of that shirt, actually, but one thing you always mention is average is the enemy. And that's one thing that I always talk about on this podcast is just how we level up in all these different areas in our lives. So I will kind of jump into that, but just to kind of give you guys a quick backstory, I was that average guy. 3.5 years ago when I first met Bedros. I actually met him through our buddy Dan Fleshman. He invited my fiance Jessica to one of his small masterminds, and we didn't know what masterminds were back then. I think it was like, I don't know, $500 or something at that time, which was a lot for me at that time. And one thing that I actually learned from Bedros and went into this event was I didn't have money and I wanted to see how I can get in. So I actually messaged Bedros. I don't know if he remembers this, but I asked him if I could do some photography for his event and come and just do some photography. But of course he said, he had a photographer, but he said, come anyways. And that was one thing that I really took to heart. He still invited me and everything. And he always showed me, about coming with a giving hand, first of all. And just being valuable to others. And luckily I've been able to be around him ever since. And, ever since that first event, thanks again for that, Bedros. And yeah, man, that's one thing I learned from that event too, is just, the power of having a mentor, of going to these events, these masterminds, and how it really changed my life. But yeah, man, what I want to jump into you with here is just about, how to become our best selves and, not just live an average life. Of course, fitness, family, finances. I know those are all things that you're a big believer in as well. But I mean, how important would you say it is to have a mentor if you want to be successful in your life?
That's a good question, man. And I think Tony Robbins says it best. He's got a quote that says, like, we all stand on the shoulders of giants, meaning there's always someone that came before you and there's someone that came before that person that you learned from, that you got tips from, that you got success coaching from, whether overtly or covertly, meaning you might have just been around them and you just took it through environmental exposure, or it was a working relationship like how you and I have, where initially I was like, with a giving hand, I'm like, man, if this guy's willing to come and trade his time and his services to be inside that room, I see potential in him. So I'm willing to say, hey, look, I got my photographers, videographers, but come on in and experience it. And I always tell people, and I'm sure I told you this, pay it forward to others. And then when you have the means, come back and pay for it. And there hasn't been one person that's let me down when I've done that. Now, all that said, when people tell me like, man, I'm self-made, you may have done the work to get there, but there was someone that inspired you, motivated you, left the breadcrumbs, coached you, mentored you, like I said, either overtly or covertly. And so we all have to recognize that there are mentors around us. Even if those mentors, by the way, JJ, show up as people who are, well, for example, Steve Eckhart, he's one of my lead instructors for the project. He's a very angry and pissed off Marine who runs the project with me. And the example that he gives is, he goes, I learned everything about being a father and a husband from my deadbeat drunk dad, because his dad was such a bad example of how not to be a father, how not to be a husband, that he's like, I just said I'm going to do the opposite of this guy and I'll be a great dad. So sometimes mentors show up as cautionary tales in our lives and we learn to not be like them, but we're still standing on the shoulders of giants, even though if sometimes those giants are a piece of shit.
Yeah. And lots of times when we see very successful people, we think they just figured out a way to make it on their own, but you've been very transparent about you with Jim Franco back in the day. how he was kind of your first mentor when you first started training and stuff too. And I never even knew the value of it until I actually experienced it firsthand and stuff. But also, I think that sometimes we get to a breaking point in our life where we just have to make a change where shit's not going good. We're struggling financially, just like we don't know what else to do. So I think that we have to turn towards people that have a different belief system, different habits, different mindset to show us a different way, but then also teach us new things to really get there. So just curious, man, is there ever like a point in your life where you had kind of a rock bottom moment or just something that really made you kind of flip the switch?
Yeah, so for me, there's always been a rock bottom moment. And the rock bottom moment for me twice that I could think of was one in my early 20s. When I was financially broke, I had gotten kicked out of my apartment. I'd started a supplement company back in 1997. So think about an online business in 1997 with dial-up internet, no Google to really do searches yet and to run ads, no social media to create a community. And I started this website called totalmuscle.com, and I was selling supplements, like all the designer brands. It wasn't my brand. And it failed miserably. And when it failed miserably, I used the last of my rent money to try and give it one more run. That didn't work out. And I found myself homeless for a period of time, living in my Toyota pickup. And that to me was rock bottom. And it was one of those moments where I was like, man, okay, the pain is great enough where I'm willing to humble myself and ask for help. And so I asked my friend, who I was a personal trainer with at the gym. I said, hey man, is there any chance I could just chill on your couch for a month or two while I get back on my feet? Because living in my Toyota pickup isn't fun. I, at the same time, was a personal trainer at that LA Fitness where I met Jim Franco, a 64-year-old entrepreneur. I'm in my early 20s. I can tell he saw something in me which gave me hope because, man, I was wounded. I was hurt. I just experienced a massive loss financially. I lost a roof over my head. I'm living in a Toyota pickup. And it's not so bad living in a Toyota pickup when you got a camper shell on it and you're in Southern California. You know this. We live in Southern California. The weather's fine most of the time. But it's still not the most ideal quality of life. And so for me, once I found a couch to write on, which again, that's a mentor, someone gave a shit, right? But that was my rock bottom. And then I had a mentor who I was personally training in his workouts and asking him questions like, hey, where did I go wrong with this business? How could I have done it differently? Was I too early to the market? And he started to kind of give me guidance and gave me what I call now outside eyes. There's always someone with more experience that can look at your problems with outside eyes and go, dude, the answer is simple. Why don't you see it? You and I don't have that experience and we're inside the forest, and so all we see is trees. He's like in a helicopter above us and going, dude, the reason you're seeing trees is because you're in a forest. There's a path to your right. Why don't you go and find it? So rock bottom for me there was in my early 20s, around 23, 24 years old. Once again, I hit a rock bottom about 11 years ago at the age of 38, and that was not a financial rock bottom, although while I was in debt, in pretty big debt, I'd started Fit Body Bootcamp, our international fitness franchise. I'm trying to grow my coaching business. I'm burning the candle on both ends. I've got no real structure or discipline or routine. I'm just trying to work, work, work. My mentality was, I will sleep when I'm dead. And I thought that that was a really big badge of honor that I could carry with me. And soon, you start taking your relationship for granted, you start missing your kids, you start seeing that the debt is accumulating, that there might be no end in sight. And while you are rich in assets, you're poor in cash, you don't see any hope for recouping that money or winning back your time and being able to have a normal structure. And that's another rock bottom for me. And that's when I had a massive panic attack. I talk about it in my book, Man Up. Dude, I thought that was a heart attack I was having. It was a Monday morning. I thought I was having a heart attack. My, pulse was racing. I went tunnel vision. My hands and arms started to tingle. My respiration, my breathing was just at a high, super high level. And I remember thinking to myself, like, this is obviously a heart attack. I'm about to die. I'm 38 years old. This sucks. Who's going to walk my daughter, Chloe, down the aisle? Who's going to teach my son to be a modern day knight? These are the responsibilities I have as a father. Like, I screwed it all up. That was an emotional rock bottom, not a financial rock bottom like the previous one. And so once again, when you hit rock bottom, when you finally have like this enough is enough moment, you're willing to humble yourself and reach out for help. So I went to a doctor. They referred me to a psychologist. I started working on the things that caused stress and anxiety and triggered my panic attack. And that led to doing a lot of deep work in unpacking what happened to me as a kid. I was molested as a kid growing up in Armenia. Then we came here to the United States. Yes, that saved me from the constant molestation by the two older boys in Armenia. But then we come here, we're foreigners, we're immigrants, we're living in Section 8 housing. We're literally finding food in dumpsters behind grocery stores, food that has been expired, hasn't necessarily gone bad, so we're pulling it out of the dumpsters and eating it. And you get picked on at school. You know, you got a funny haircut, your parents are giving you hand-me-down clothes that they found in a garage sale. And so now you're getting bullied, and all of those things add trauma and create these emotional scars where you are unhealed, yet you're trying to launch into a adulthood, into becoming a father, a husband, a leader, all while trying to carry these heavy weights of trauma. Think about if I just put hundreds of pounds of chains on you and then go, all right, JJ, now go run this marathon. And you're like, bro, I can't run this marathon right now. You've like burdened me with all this weight. You have to heal through the trauma. You have to heal through the pain so that those chains come off and you could perform at your optimal level.
You know, one thing that I heard you say too is that they created lots of scars in you too. And one thing that I feel like in me too, it's like we get to such a point where we're just broke, like almost broken or just hurt, or we got something inside of us that just wants to propel ourselves forward. I think you've called it a fire in the belly or the chip in the shoulder. That's like, that's kind of the motivation that gets you to drive and to push and to just be as far away from that kind of rock bottom as possible, you know? And I know, I'm sure we kind of both chose this entrepreneurship journey. Of course, you've been on it a lot longer than me and everything, but obviously there's lots of ups, downs, you know, that come with it. Talk to me about the mindset it takes to just be able to push through all that shit and just be able to keep going after failure, and what does it take to be successful, you know, in this entrepreneurship journey for someone that's been in as long as you have?
Yeah, so, you know, dude, I've got a great friend. His name is Nick, and he's got a good saying, so I have to give him credit where credit is due. And he says, the business plan is simple, the businessman is complex. And isn't that true? Like when you have all these traumas, scars, false belief systems, like false identity, these stories that you've told yourself, maybe parents have called you fat and lazy and sloppy and whatever, then you grow up and all that soundtrack, that negative soundtrack plays in the back of your head while you're trying to launch into entrepreneurship. And, you know, today when I look at my life and I'm making several $1 million a month, I can't even imagine doing that kind of revenue and having this kind of like Cinderella life that I have. I'm like the Cinderella man, while also carrying the weight of that burden. And so for me, it was the healing that had to happen. And so when you have a business plan, and then when you actually heal the businessman, and again, 15 months of therapy with a psychologist, Dr. Kevin Downing there in Brea, California. And it was not fun conversations all the time, man. It wasn't. It was conversations that kind of made me feel like when I would leave there for 2 or 3 days, I felt like I was walking through molasses, like you're just in brain fog because you're unearthing. Imagine you have these scabs and you're taking these scabs off your body that have been there for so long, and there's pus and blood and gunk coming out, but you have to purge all that out to heal. And so as I healed the businessman, and as I got a mentor who gave me a business plan, I now had this, what I call the rage in my eyes, the chip on my shoulder, and the fire in my belly that I could go attack anything, right? Before, I still had the rage in my eyes, the chip on my shoulder, and the fire in my belly, but I was attacking myself. I was self-destructive, because when you have had stuff happen to you, you start hitting this, when you start seeing success and happiness and fulfillment, but you don't really feel like you deserve it, that you're not worthy of happiness, of money, of abundance, of time freedom, you start hitting a glass ceiling and you feel uncomfortable. It's a place you're not familiar with, and so you self-sabotage. And so the same rage in my eyes and chip on my shoulder, fire in my belly went inward, and I would self-destruct. Now, as I've healed and as I have a business plan, and the businessman is healthy, man, you combine those two together with the rage in your eyes and you just like lean into it like no one's business. And I remember people telling me like 2015, 16, 17, like, dude, there's something different about you. There's something different. There's an energy about you. And that's because I had healed. The businessman had healed. The business plan was very clear. And I was just in attack mode. And there was nothing that was going to stop me from achieving my life goals.
Yeah, I love that, man. And you know, yeah, I think when lots of people start a business, or it's what we talk about, not average. You know, the 9 to 5, retire, all that shit's kind of the average. But when we go down this different path, everything's different. It's a step outside of our comfort zone. It's doing things that we're not used to. It's failing, but there's always that fear of like, oh shit, what happens if this doesn't work out? So I
Yeah.
think it's important, like you said, just healing yourself, becoming, and then I think that the mentorship is just huge. Surrounding yourself with people that can even, lift you up through all the hard times. I mean, you went through Fit Body Boot Camp, COVID happened and had to change everything, but you kept on pushing and stuff. So that shows kind of a lot about the mindset that resilient mindset you have to just to keep on pushing.
And you know what, dude? I'm glad you brought that up because had I not done the healing, had I not done the self work, the 1.0 version of me would have dealt with COVID very differently. I would have seen it as I'm under attack, I'm the victim, this is going to be impossible. Because remember, COVID forced many businesses to shut down. But if you really think about it, gyms, which is the industry that I'm in, right? Fitness franchise. At the time we had over 600 Fit Body Bootcamp locations worldwide. Gyms and restaurants were under the highest attack. And so, there we are. Our gyms are shut down. Cops are fining all of our franchise locations if they try and stay open. And I was in a very different space because I had healed. I went from 1.0 to 2.0. I had this new mindset of attack everything and own the responsibility instead of putting a external locus of control, as in all of my problems are a byproduct of things outside of my control. My locus of control, the 2.0 version of me, is internal locus of control. I control everything. All the problems are for me to solve. These are gifts and blessings. And so because of that, when the pandemic came, I looked at it as, all right, this is a test of my true leadership. Do I really have what it takes? Instead of saying I'm a victim, how dare they attack me, and I'm going to have to fold and shut my franchise down, and so long to my dreams. Bro, I fought back. Yes, we lost 218 franchise locations, but we built those back over the last year and a half, and we are on the fastest trajectory than we've ever been as a franchise.
Love it. And I saw you post this the other day, but yeah, you posted most people mistake quitting for failure. It's just like, hey, all that shit happened to you, and you're just like, let me adapt, let me find a new way, let me figure it out, and just keep on pushing and look at where it's at now.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Because it's so easy. Like when you have that mindset of a victim, that it was someone else's fault, they brought this upon me, I can't do anything about it. Then you go, well, I tried and I'm going to have to quit. But when internally you use the word quit, but externally you tell people, I failed. It failed. It didn't work. It wasn't my fault. It's like, no, you quit because you gave up the fight. As long as you're in the fight, there's a chance of winning.
So what would you tell someone that kind of the three rapid fire for you? So someone who's struggling financially, where's the first place they need to start to improve themselves?
I think the first place to start, like if someone once asked me, they go, hey man, I have $5,000 to invest. Is there any of your coaching that I can come to or whatever? I go, bro, invest that $5,000 in your personal development. Like figure out what your limiting beliefs are and break through those limiting beliefs. Figure out what stories that you've told yourself and break those. Figure out what false identity that you carry, like you're unlovable, you're not worthy of money, you're not worthy of success, you're a failure, like whatever parents have told you. Because parents, school teachers, grandparents, all these people mean well, but their only job, most of them, 99.9% of parents, teachers, grandparents, aunts, uncles, community, just encourage you to be average, because they go, we want you to be safe. We don't want you to take risks. We want you to just get a 9 to 5, work for a company, go to college, get in debt, work for a company, pay off your debt, pay your taxes, die in debt. And they are encouraging being average. And so I would say, look, to break out of average, you have to break your limiting beliefs. You have to change your identity. You have to change the stories that you've been told or that you've told yourself. That is the best place to invest your first few $1,000s in if you want to make millions of dollars as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. What you kind of answered it there, but yeah, like we get stuck in this average, comfortable life. But I've heard you say it so many times, why it's important that we always need to make lots of money for all kinds of stuff for a family and everything like that. And just hearing what you've done with your own family and stuff, and all the Shriners Children's Hospital and all the stuff that you can do with money now. But talk to me a little bit about why we should be always striving to just kind of break through that average lifestyle.
Yeah, that's a good question. So imagine this. You've got a little boy now, right? You and Jessica. Right. How old is he?
He's a year and a half.
I can't even imagine. I know you guys now well enough where there's no way you and Jess are like, man, I just can't wait for him to be an average kid, have average grades, marry an average girl, have an average life, be an average debt. You would never say that. Yet we and I know you're not doing this, but most people, like you're part of that 0.1% who actually does the right thing, but 99.9% of people, while they don't want that, they don't want their kids to be average, yet they put their average expectations on them. Play it safe, watch out, be good, follow the rules. No, man, I need to operate outside of the rules. I'm not saying don't. I have a moral compass that supersedes any kind of law. I'm a outlaw because I operate outside of the laws that are unjust, unfair, and designed to suppress me and you. And I operate by my moral compass, by my moral authority, which is a higher system of laws of do good and hurt no one and seek to level up to your highest level of self-mastery. But why it's important to break out of average is this. Recently, my mom, who's now passed away, 4 weeks ago, my mom passed away of actually she had Alzheimer's, but she passed away of old age. She was 87 years old when she died. She died in her house with an Armenian caretaker taking care of her for the last 3 years. 7 years ago, she got Alzheimer's. I paid for the experimental medication because I have the money. I make an obscene amount of money, and I'm very proud of that. I was so broke, I was so poor as a kid that my only goal was to make money and weaponize that money to do a lot of good with it. And when my mom was sick, I was paying for the experimental medication to slow down the onset of Alzheimer's so that she doesn't die from suffocation, because that's how Alzheimer's kills you. It eats the part of the brain that controls your breathing. Now, if I was just an average guy making average money for myself and I'm saying, hey, I just have enough money for me and my family, I actually do pretty well, I make $400,000 a year, so me and my family, we're good. And then my mom gets Alzheimer's, guess what, bro? She would have been dead 5 years ago and she would have suffocated to death. But because we're able to slow down the onset, give her a comfortable life, have an Armenian caretaker take care of her the whole time, and then me and my siblings were around her when she died and passed away, and I was holding her head and holding her hand. You know how good that feels? And money allowed me to do that. Money allowed me to have a leadership team here at headquarters so that I could go for weeks at a time and tend to my mom. Money allows me to donate to Shriners Children's Hospital, where we donate 7 figures now. And I've been donating to Shriners Children's Hospital for over 12 years now. And they give medical surgeries to kids whose families who can't afford those bills. I did not have a good life growing up as a child. And so all 3 of the charities that I've adopted, Compassion International, Toys for Tots, and Shriners Children's Hospital, which we donate millions to, it's a very healing experience to give money to those charities that help those kids. And so when people go, man, but money can't buy happiness, then I have to remind them that you just haven't given enough of it away. Because if you give enough of the money away to the right causes, boy, I'm as happy as they fucking come, bro.
Yeah, man. And when you first told me that story about your mom too, and just having that money, it really made me. Never even something I thought about, but definitely made me take it into perspective too. Like, man, I need to just keep grinding, keep pushing, And of course, so we got lots of entrepreneurs and probably coaches listening to this as well. But yeah, what would you say to the guy that wants to be that very successful guy that maybe they're doing fairly well, making maybe 200 to 300K, they got maybe 100K saved up? Where would they put that money to make more money? Real estate, investing, stocks, in the business, in themselves. What would be your best advice for them, man?
Yeah, so that's a good question. Like, first of all, if someone's like, hey, man, I want to go to the moon. I want to start making 7 figures, 8 figures. I want to be that 9-figure guy or gal, right? Cool, you can. But understand there's some sacrifices you have to make. Like, you can have anything you want in life, but you can't have everything you want in life. So understand that there's some sacrifices you have to make. For 10 years straight, I was willing to miss out on weekends. I spent Friday nights and weekends working on my dream, working on my businesses, giving myself the distinct advantage on weekends, knowing that my competitors were partying, my competitors were going to weddings and funerals and birthday parties. I wasn't. For 10 years, I was focused and locked onto my dreams. I lost opportunities to hang out with friends. Yes, I texted. Yes, I called with them, but I wasn't at events. And I was willing to sacrifice the immediate gratification for the long-term building of this empire that allows me to serve humanity. So I'm so particularly focused on my purpose. I know what I'm called to do on this planet. There is no wondering, like, what am I called to do? I know exactly what I'm called to do, that I'm willing to sacrifice in the areas of having parties and drinking on weekends. Like, no, man, I stay sober, I do my work, I focus on the outcome, and I've been able to leapfrog my competitors because of that. And so people need to understand that you are going to have to make sacrifices. You decide where those sacrifices are going to be. At some point, I even made those sacrifices, and this is embarrassing to say, in my health. While I've been a fitness guy my whole life, I found that in the early parts of building Fit Body Bootcamp, I was eating recklessly because I was emotional eating, stress eating, trying to build the company. I was not bringing it at the gym. I'd show up to the gym, but you know this. You can always see that guy like, oh, he's here, but he's not really working out. He's on his phone. He's lost in thought. I was that guy. And so I put on 30 pounds. And while I'm 6 foot and I could hide it under a t-shirt, the reality was I was not happy with the man I was. So I should not have sacrificed my health, my fitness, but I should have sacrificed only my weekends. I have sacrificed time with my family, but I made up for it during the week. If I was traveling and speaking on weekends, then I would make up for it on the weekday. But there are going to be sacrifices. Number 2, understand that once you invest in yourself and fix the businessman or fix the businesswoman, then your next investment is to invest in a mentor. Before you invest in real estate and crypto and the S&P 500, figure out what business you're in and then find the experts who can help you because they've already been successful in that business. Pay them to get the advantage, to be able to leapfrog others, to be able to find the shortcuts, to be able to time collapse your results. Like, I will use money all day long to time collapse and get results. I've had Frank Kern as a coach, Dan Kennedy as a coach, Joe Polish as a business coach. I've hired speaking coaches, business coaches, marketing coaches, sales coaches, because each time I have, instead of taking years to get the results, it's taken me months, and I want that.
Yeah, that's one thing I learned from you, and that's why I keep showing up. I think the last time I seen you, he says, "Man, I always see you at these, and every time I see you, you're making more money." You know, and I'll start off by saying that when I first met him, I was in the back of the room, barely asking any questions. Now I'm front row. I'm like, hey, like just trying to soak it in, and yeah, just every opportunity I can, just to be there and soak up the information. I truly believe that's the power of having a mentor and how we can really take our lives to the next level. But what do you say to? I mean, you work with lots of guys that are trying to grow their businesses and everything like that. You give them the plan and everything they need to follow, but they don't do the work. They would, just like with anything, they want to be successful. They say this, but they're not consistent. They're not putting in the work. Like, what's the first thing you start off with to kind of coach them up or just help them, move past the bullshit?
Yeah, it's funny. Like so I've got this coaching program called the Domination Year. Like, anyone that's an entrepreneur who wants to do big things in their business probably knows of it. It's $100,000 for a year of coaching with me. My clientele roster is full. I'm working with like big entrepreneurs, New York Times bestselling authors, pro athletes who have left the sports industry after retirement and now starting in entrepreneurship, and they want to coach and mentor with me. And in that Domination Year coaching program, it doesn't matter if they're doctors, dentists, pro athletes, New York Times bestselling authors, some of the big speakers that y'all follow on social media with the blue check marks are my coaching clients. Well, lo and behold, if I see that the business plan that I've help them develop is not being executed, I immediately go to the businessman and I'm like, all right, so what's the hang up? If it's not diet and fitness, in other words, if it's not their health, if they have a few pounds to lose, 30, 40 pounds to lose, I'm like, focus on that. Because I know that if they start feeling congruent with the man that they want to be, if they idealize this man, but when they look at themselves in the mirror, they're this guy, then there's an incongruency. And so you feel like a hypocrite. You feel like an imposter, a liar, a fake, a phony. And so what can we do to get these guys to match up and be one person? And so I'll say, look, man, focus on your nutrition, focus on your training, go find a personal trainer, nutrition coach, and stick to it. Lose the weight and become that idealized version that you see in your mind's eye. They go, how's that going to help me in my business? I go, simple. The same traits that you need to develop a lean, athletic, jacked body that you're proud of are focus, consistency, delayed gratification, and discipline. Because you and I know this. We can go work out with Phil Heath, 7-time Mr. Olympia. We can work out with him one time and have the best goddamn upper body workout of our lives. Look in the mirror, we're going to look the same. Now, if we work out with him 7 days a week and eat the way he wants us to eat and do all the things he asks us, a year from now, 6 months from now, it'll be a very different physique that we have. And so we know that there's delayed gratification, there's focus and consistency required, and there is a discipline that he's built when a man takes his body to the place he wants it to go. Those same traits, those 4 traits that I just talked about, transfer to business, and it's usually one or all of those traits that are missing, which is why they don't execute on the business plan.
And I think they help build an identity of someone, like a new identity. Like I noticed this with fitness too. It's like these people get in really good shape. Now they start to identify themselves as someone who takes care of themselves, who values themselves. It was funny. I was hearing your story about your tricep, your torn tricep, and how you were still pushing through your workouts. And I got this shoulder thing, and I've been pushing it through and trying to do different workouts, different ways, and not also the shoulder. But it's like it's an identity, and it's just a value we have that like, fuck, we're hurt. We're still gonna try to figure out a way to still get it done because we feel like shit if we don't work out, if we miss it, because it's part of who we are and who are and our identity. You know what I mean?
And you know what, dude? I'm glad you brought that up, JJ. That's such a very profound point you just made. Think about this. You have a legitimate hurt shoulder. I've got a legitimately torn tricep. Like you can see the muscle starting to build now, but you could see right there, that's where the tendon was attached. Now it's not. So it's literally retracted. And I may end up getting a surgery, but because I work out hard, I know how to work around that muscle and develop what's still there. And so I may not need the surgery. But all this to say, I've got a torn tricep. You might have a torn something in your shoulder. Both stories could be true, meaning someone might say, look, because I've got a torn tricep, it hurts when I work out. I can't bench press. I can't shoulder press. I can't do push-ups. I can't do this. Hell, bro, I couldn't even jog because just the jarring of my arm hurt. So I was like, all right, you got to start walking uphill, fat boy, because you can't lose those abs. You're a part of this, like you preach fitness. How can you lose your abs, right? So both stories can be true. The story of I have to change, pivot, modify to keep my body, or the story of I hurt myself and therefore I can't work out and that's why I got fat. They're both true. Which true story do you want? That's the identity that you got to pick.
Well, man, it reminds me of the story you told when you had a speaking engagement coming up, and the guy died on the plane.
Yes.
And you had to go and you had to go. You had to rent a car. You still had to drive there, like
3 states, bro, through the middle of the night, and then show up and still crush my talk.
Yeah. And Bedros was talking about he had all this stuff running through his head. You had all these excuses and stuff, but what was the one thing that motivated you? Remember what you told us?
Yeah, I just told I tell everybody this, like I imagine that my son, and actually there they are, there's those pictures. They're much smaller in this picture. Now they're 18 and 16, but I imagine that Andrew and Chloe have a live feed 24/7 of my life. Like there's cameras around me, they have a live feed, and they're like, all right, dad missed his flight, and now he's been delayed 8 hours. Now his assistant is texting him saying, hey, we can just cancel the talk and give the money back. And I'm like, it was tempting, but I'm like, if Andrew and Chloe are watching this and I'm an example to my kids, am I going to be like, well, there's a little discomfort and I was delayed by 8 hours because a guy died and so I had to miss the flight? No, man, I took the red-eye flight from California to Atlanta, and then I missed my connection from Atlanta to North Carolina, which was my speaking gig. And the whole time I'm like, Andrew and Chloe are probably loving this live cast. They're like, any minute now, Dad's going to be like, I quit and I'm just going to head back. And that's the lesson he's going to teach us. Sometimes you have to give up. And I was like, fuck that. And so I was like, Joan, I know it's 1 a.m. here in Atlanta, but please rent a car for me. Joan's my assistant, and she rented a car. And I drove from Atlanta through South Carolina, so through Georgia, South Carolina to North Carolina, got there at 6 a.m., showered up, spoke at 8 a.m., and crushed it, and then fell asleep in my hotel room. And I was like, man, Andrew and Chloe are going to be so proud. Now, the reality is they don't have a live stream of me every minute of every minute, but that's how I operate because I believe that karma will happen. So if I go and tell them, hey kids, you should follow through on your promises. You should do everything you say. You should never give up. But then I don't follow through and I don't do what I say and I give up. Karma will get the best of me and they will end up living a mediocre life because that is what I modeled.
Well, and I love that you said that because I started thinking about that and using that as a kind of like a little motivation driver too. But I think it's so important that, man, we have these internal drivers because you hear all the time that men get full of excuses. Oh, I don't have enough time, energy. But it's like if instead of the excuses, if we can tell ourselves things like that are going to push us through to get the hard shit done, that are going to still motivate us and still push it to get it done. And look at all that shit that you went through, but because you kept telling yourself that story instead of the bullshit excuses.
Yeah, man. And I'm not gonna lie, like, obviously when you're driving through 3 states, you're gonna have to stop at a few gas stations to fill up on gas, take a leak, etc. And I'm like, ooh, get the donuts. Like it's 4 in the morning. You deserve those donuts. Eat those donuts so you can stay awake. I'm like, no, fat boy, your kids are watching. Don't get the donuts. And then I was like, all right, well, I made it through 2 states. It was a great try. I should just text Joan and be like, cancel this event. I'm like, no, fat boy, your kids are watching. Then I started getting mad at myself. And this is like the internal, the advocate versus the internal critic. And I'm like, you know what? Fuck this. Instead, I hope I get a flat tire because I want to see if I can change the flat tire on the side of a freeway that I'm unfamiliar with, get back in the car and still make it there. Now I was actually wanting to get more adversities stacked on so I could really tell Andrew and Chloe what a badass their dad is.
Well, you know what, too, man? It's like, okay, obviously having a mentor, it's great. You learn different things and stuff. But one thing that not a lot of people talk about is like when you surround yourself with a mentor like this and you hear stories like this, you start to change the way you think about stuff. Like my excuses aren't shit. The way I'm doing, like, because you hear this stuff, and that's how I need to push myself now. And it's like you pick up the habits, the disciplines, and the mindset, and the way of the way our mentors think, and that can help just change lots of our stuff in our lives as well. You know.
That's exactly it. And mentors are meant to be like role models, right? And the right mentor obviously is meant to be a good role model, an example. The wrong mentor is going to be a cautionary tale, but they're both role models.
So I just kind of want to finish up with obviously, of course, the family stuff, man. So I know lots of us entrepreneurs, we are busy. We want to work on the business. We want to grind. We want to do all this stuff. Like, what's your feeling about, work-life balance?
So I don't think there's work-life balance for the highly ambitious. And when I say highly ambitious, I mean someone that's got these big grand dreams where since they were young kids, they knew they didn't fit in, they felt special or different. They always felt like the black sheep around their friends, and they felt like people don't understand me. Like if you're that guy, and I know you are, and anyone watching this and listening to this, if you're that person, you're like, oh fuck, he's talking about me. Yeah. That person does not have work-life balance because odds are you're type A, tightly wound, high speed. And we are the fucking backbone of humanity. We produce money. We create change. We find the solutions to cancers. We create the iPhone when, Steve Jobs was like, fuck the razor. It's got a hinge. We don't need a phone with the hinge. We need something that's elegant, made of glass, that's a computer, that's a dictionary, that's a everything, a phone, and you could access the world on your fingertips. And everyone's like, oh, I don't get it. He's like, you never will because you peasants don't understand. And that's okay. Like we are their protectors. And I say that because I was a peasant. I was part of the unwashed masses. I was conditioned to be average, but I transcended because I knew I was meant for more. The inertia of average wants to suck us in and keep us average because everyone around us are average. But we have to realize that average is the enemy. And if we are going to flip that switch, we have to fight the inertia, the momentum that's trying to keep us down. And so with that in mind, for me, it was simple. I was like, I'm meant for more, and therefore there is no work-life balance. As I started developing a family, got married, had kids, I was like, all right, there's going to have to be a work-life mix. So if I'm going to a speaking event, I'm taking my family with me. So my wife can't have a job where she has to ask for time off. I have to make so much money that my career, my companies make enough money where my family and I can just go on my speaking gig. I can speak in New York City and then take a couple days and enjoy the city. And I can talk to the school principal. My kids went to private school and said, as long as my kids get a 3.5 or better GPA, is it cool that I take them out of school during the week where we can go do Disneyland and beach days because I work on weekends and therefore won't be able to have weekends if it's not on a weekday? And they're like, yeah, cool. So it's a work-life mix and never a work-life balance. Only average people are looking for balance. Savages are not.
Yeah, I love it, man. Well, but then, of course, you still, like you said, a work-life mix. You still work out with your kids. You have the date with your daughter. Like you're still making the time in different ways, and you got your own special things you do and stuff. So you're still getting it all done. The fitness, the business, and everything. But love it. So it's just the work-life mix.
That's exactly it, man. And like you said, every night I work out with my son. I go on date nights with my daughter. I'm so involved in their life. And the phone allows me to make selfie videos and send it to them anytime I want. And I can show love and connection. And like my daughter today, she's got a cold or a flu. We got a family group text that we do. And she put in the family group text this morning, hey guys, I'm staying home, I'm sick. Hey mom, can you call the school and let them know? So I checked on her a couple times. I sent her a voice shot. She sent me something back that said, hey dad, that makes me feel special. Like, bro, I may be busy doing coaching calls with clients and doing things like this, and I may not be home until later tonight because after this, I got to work out with my son, and then I got jujitsu after that. But my daughter does not miss me because she knows all throughout the day, Dad is concerned for me.
Well, and not only that too, like if you guys haven't been able to spend the time like I have with Bedros, like you have hard cutoffs, like you shut off like all the notifications, like you turn your phone off. You're not the dad on the couch still working and stuff. Like you're present as hell.
Yeah. Once I'm home, dude, like
Yeah.
headquarters could burn down. All my companies can burn down and it doesn't matter because now my head and my heart are always where my feet are. And I think that's a great lesson to end on is wherever your feet are is where your head and your heart should be. If you find yourself, you're at home, but you're thinking about work, you're really offending your family and it's leaving scars on them. If you're at work and you're thinking about your family, you are now disrespecting your business and that's going to leave financial scars. And so wherever your feet are is where your head and your heart should be.
Love that, man. Well, kind of one of my last questions, man. I mean, you've done all these great things. You help men, you help even dads become better dads, like all your different programs, the project, the Square program. Like, what are you most proud of?
Man, I'm most proud of people ask me this question all the time and they're going to be like, oh, this book or that thing or that, Inc, when we hit the Inc 500 list and blah, blah, blah. I'm most proud of Andrew and Chloe. My entire life's goal was to raise two humans. Remember, I'm just one human myself. And it took me into my late 20s before I started to self-develop and help humanity. My wife and I committed early on in life that we are going to raise two humans from day one that are going to be self-actualized, that are going to be self-developed, that are going to be self-aware, that are going to be cultured and have experienced all these different cultures and countries that we've taken them to, and they're going to be servants of humanity. And I'm most proud of that, of seeing how they serve their friends, their school, their classmates. And then I could only imagine what happens when they launch into adulthood and they're going to make 10 times the impact in this world than I ever did.
That's awesome, man. Love that. Well, hey, Bedros, if you haven't listened to this show, I always end it off with, life gets better when you do. And I always talk about 1% better every day. So knowing everything you know, if you could do something every day to make your life 1% better every day, what would it be?
The one thing I would do every single day is work out first thing in the morning, because when you do, the rest of the day becomes much easier to handle.
Love that, man. Well, any other last words or otherwise, where can they find you at, man?
You know what? The only other thing to really say is that all of us look, you don't go through life without scars and trauma and, suffering. And so all of us have experienced that. Now the question is, what is the story that you're going to believe? Are you going to believe the story that you're not worthy, that you're not meant to be, that you're dumb, you're not smart, you're clumsy, you're big boned, you're fat genetics? Or are you going to believe the story that there's this movie happening and you are the hero, you are the main character in that movie, and that you can write how that script goes? Like, there's many blank pages. Like, I want people to realize that the story can change the moment you decide to take the pen and write the script of this movie that's happening about your life, and you are the main character. And so if people can realize that, then the only thing that's left is to find me on Instagram or YouTube at Bedros Keuilian.
Yeah, well, man, I love that. Even just from when I first met you, it's like crazy to see all you've done over the last 3-4 years with yourself. And it's motivated me, of course, to do a lot more and everything. So just can't say thank you enough for all you do, man. And this won't be the last time we do stuff together, man. So life gets better when you do, guys. 1% better every day. Thanks, Bedros.
Thank you, brother.